Hey man, nobody really prepares you for what it feels like to date in this generation. They tell you love is supposed to be simple, effortless, natural, but the reality today is nothing like that. Being with someone now feels less like building a partnership and more like trying to keep up with expectations that shift every day. Modern relationships aren't built on presence, they're built on performance. You're not judged by who you are, but by how well you fit into the image she created in her head. And the worst part? That image isn't even hers. It's Instagram's, it's TikTok's, it's the unrealistic highlight reels of men she's never met but compares you to daily. So having a girlfriend today isn't just about being a man, it's about competing with fantasies that don't even exist. You're expected to be strong but soft, dominant but submissive, emotionally available but never emotional, confident but not arrogant, protective but never possessive, ambitious but always free for her. It's a constant contradiction, a maze where every path leads to another expectation, another standard, another test she doesn't even realize she's giving you. And the craziest part? She genuinely believes these contradictions make sense. Because the modern world has convinced her that everything she feels is right, even when it makes no logical sense at all. So you find yourself bending, adjusting, compromising, not because you're weak, but because you care. Yet somehow the more you give, the less she sees. The more you try, the less she appreciates. The more consistent you are, the more she takes you for granted. That's modern love. Having a girlfriend today means you're never just dating her. You're dating her emotions, her insecurities, her past trauma, her friends' opinions, and her entire social media audience. Every argument is influenced by what she saw online. Every disagreement is amplified by the validation of people who don't even know you. She doesn't ask herself if she's being fair. She asks her group chat if her feelings are valid, and they always are. Because the truth is, women today don't talk to each other for advice. They talk to each other for ego protection. So instead of resolving issues with you, she resolves them with people who already agree with her. And you become the villain in a story she wrote with the help of people who have failed relationships of their own. There's also the constant fear of comparison, not hers, but yours. You start noticing how easily influenced she is by trends, how every week there's a new standard for what a real relationship should look like. One day it's matching outfits, the next day it's extravagant dates, the next week it's emotional bare minimum reels telling her she deserves better. And the more content she consumes, the more she believes that love should feel like a movie instead of a commitment. She begins seeing her life through filters, and she expects you to live up to those filters too. So now you're not building something real with her, you're performing something unreal for her imagination. And let's talk about the emotional volatility, the way her mood can shift based on something she saw, something she felt, something she assumed, or something she imagined. You can spend an entire week giving her your best, being present, being supportive, being consistent, and she can still wake up one morning, distant for no reason. Not because you failed, but because her mind created a story you didn't know you were supposed to fight against. One moment she's affectionate, the next she's cold. One moment she's excited to see you, the next she's overwhelmed by emotions she can't even explain. And you stand there wondering how the woman who said she loved you yesterday can barely look at you today. Having a girlfriend today means walking on emotional eggshells, not out of fear, but out of respect for her unpredictable inner world. You're trying to hold things together while she's trying to feel something she can't name. And somehow, you become the emotional anchor for someone who is drifting through waves she doesn't understand. It's exhausting, not because of her, but because of the unrealistic expectations placed on modern men. You're expected to be her stability, while she explores her chaos. You're expected to love her through every mood swing, every emotional storm, every contradiction. And you do it because that's what a man does. But over time, you start questioning who holds you together. Let's be honest, the loyalty dynamic today is twisted too. She wants commitment, but she also wants attention from strangers online. She wants exclusivity, but she also wants freedom to act single on social media. She wants you to love her deeply, but she doesn't want to feel controlled. She wants a mature man, but she wants to keep the validation habits of a teenager. And if you dare question it, she'll accuse you of being insecure. But you're not insecure, you're perceptive. You see how modern culture has convinced her that commitment is a cage instead of a connection. And so you find yourself battling influences you never signed up to fight. Algorithms, influencers, trends, ideologies, all pulling her away from reality and into a world where fantasy feels like truth. the intimacy dynamic is even more complicated. Modern relationships start fast, chemistry, excitement, passion, but they burn out even faster because connection today is built on intensity, not intimacy. She loves the highs, but she fears the responsibility of the lows. She wants vulnerability from you, but only if it doesn't make her uncomfortable. She wants closeness, but only when she's in the mood for it. She wants loyalty, but she also wants to feel desirable to everyone else. So physical closeness becomes inconsistent. Sometimes she's all over you, sometimes she's distant for reasons she can't even explain, and you're left questioning whether her heart is with you or with her emotions. Another truth? Modern relationships feel like a competition. Who cares less? Who texts slower? Who detaches first? Who appears less invested? Love shouldn't feel like a chess match, but today it often does. She fears vulnerability, so she waits for you to make every move first. She fears rejection, so she hides her affection behind sarcasm and distance. She fears losing control, so she plays emotional games that slowly drain you. And eventually, you realize you're giving everything while she's giving calculations. You're being real while she's being cautious, and that imbalance creates a quiet suffering inside you. A suffering she never acknowledges because she's too focused on protecting her ego to see the weight you carry. But the hardest part of having a girlfriend today is the uncertainty. The feeling that no matter how good you are, no matter how loyal, no matter how consistent, she could still wake up one day and decide she's not feeling it anymore. Modern relationships don't end because something went wrong. They end because she lost the spark, the butterflies, the temporary excitement she mistook for love. And you realize that you were never truly loved for your character. You were loved for the emotional high you provided. When the high fades, she questions everything, and you're left holding the pieces of something you thought was real, while she walks away chasing a feeling she may never find again. And here's where the real emotional exhaustion kicks in, when you start realizing that modern love has become less about building a life together and more about proving your worth every single day. It doesn't matter how loyal you were yesterday, how supportive you were last week, or how consistent you've been for months. She resets the scoreboard every morning based entirely on how she feels. One emotional dip, one minor disappointment, one moment where you weren't at your best, and suddenly she questions the entire relationship. You start noticing that you're no longer being appreciated for your efforts. You're being evaluated like you're part of some endless exam where the rules change every time she wakes up with a different mood. And the truth is, no man can thrive in a dynamic where he's constantly being tested but never truly understood. The deeper you go into the relationship, the clearer it becomes that her expectations aren't coming from her heart, they're coming from comparison. She sees couples online taking private jet vacations, romantic beach photos, dramatic proposals, and curated affection that looks perfect but is entirely manufactured. And even though she knows those people aren't as happy as they pretend to be, she still feels like your effort falls short because it doesn't look like the fantasy on her screen. You could take her out to dinner, spend real time with her, show genuine affection, but one scroll through social media and suddenly she's wondering why your life doesn't look like someone else's filtered highlight reel. She stops appreciating the real love you give because she's hypnotized by the illusion of love she sees online, an illusion no real man can compete with. You also start noticing her emotional dependency on validation, not from you, but from the world. Having a girlfriend today means competing against an invisible audience. She posts a picture and waits for the likes to roll in. She changes her appearance based on comments from strangers. She measures her beauty by digital numbers. And even though she has you, a man who sees her in unedited moments, she still needs reassurance from people she'll never meet. This obsession with external validation means that your opinion becomes just one voice among thousands, and sometimes it's not even the loudest one. So no matter how much you compliment her, no matter how much you reassure her, she still needs the world to approve of her before she believes anything you say, and that becomes emotionally draining for you, because you realize your love competes with an algorithm designed to keep her insecure. Then comes the pressure, not spoken, but deeply felt. She may not say it outright, but she expects you to live up to standards that aren't sustainable for any human being. Be emotionally available like her therapist, financially supportive like a millionaire, protective like a soldier, romantic like a movie character, communicative like a poet, and yet somehow completely unaffected by your own struggles. And if you fail at even one of these roles, she interprets it as you not loving her enough. She doesn't see that you're carrying your own stress, your own battles, your own ambitions. She only sees how your temporary dips affect her emotions, and that pressure builds slowly until you start losing parts of yourself trying to keep up. At some point, you begin to notice that she confuses attention with love. The moment you try to focus on your goals, she feels neglected. The moment you need time alone, she feels unwanted. The moment you focus on your mission, she interprets it as you pulling away, and you start feeling guilty for being a man with a purpose. Having a girlfriend today requires navigating the fragile balance between giving her enough attention to feel secure while giving yourself enough time to build a future. But that's a balance she often interprets emotionally instead of logically. She thinks your ambition is competition. She thinks your purpose is a threat. She thinks your silence is punishment, and she doesn't realize that a man who isn't building something eventually becomes a man who has nothing to give. What makes modern relationships even more complicated is that emotional consistency is expected of you, not her. A man must remain stable through her storms, calm through her anxiety, patient through her insecurity, loving through her distance, understanding through her confusion. Meanwhile, her emotional swings are labeled as normal, natural, or just how women are. But if you have even one moment of overwhelm, one moment of frustration, one moment of needing support, she sees it as weakness or a sign you're losing interest. And slowly you start realizing the relationship is structured around managing her emotions, not sharing yours. That imbalance wears a man down in ways nobody talks about. And then there's the problem of entitlement. The belief many women today carry without even realizing it. She wants the perks of a relationship without the responsibilities. She wants your loyalty, but she wants her options. She wants your protection, but she doesn't want accountability. She wants your stability, but she doesn't want to contribute to your peace. She wants commitment, but she acts single online. She wants honesty from you, but she hides truths to avoid conflict. She wants effort from you, but she gives energy only when she feels like it. This entitlement doesn't come from malice. It comes from a culture that constantly tells women they can do no wrong, and men must always adapt. Having a girlfriend today often means becoming the emotional leader, even if she fights your leadership every step of the way. She wants you to take charge, but she resents your authority. She wants you to make decisions, but she challenges every choice. She wants you to guide the relationship, but she doesn't want to feel controlled, so you become stuck in a dynamic where you're responsible for stability, but criticized for the structure that creates it. And the more you try to lead with strength, the more she tests that strength to reassure herself that you're still capable of leading. These constant tests drain your energy, your patience, and your desire to invest. But you slowly begin noticing that modern relationships don't fall apart from betrayal. They fall apart from emotional fatigue. The man gets tired of explaining himself, tired of proving his intentions, tired of being misunderstood, tired of walking on eggshells, tired of carrying the emotional weight, tired of trying to love someone who is constantly questioning the love she's receiving. And the saddest part is, when the man finally steps back, when he finally gets quiet, when he finally withdraws, she interprets his exhaustion as abandonment. She doesn't realize she drained the very strength she depended on. She doesn't see her part in the collapse until it's too late. And here is the quietest tragedy of having a girlfriend today. You can be loyal, honest, consistent, loving, stable, mature, and still lose her to her own emotions, not because you weren't enough, but because she expected perfection while offering instability. Not because you failed, but because her mind convinced her that love should always feel like the first month. Not because you changed, but because she changed the standards constantly. And one day she'll look back and realize you weren't the problem, you were the anchor. You were the calm. You were the one man who tried to build something real in a generation addicted to temporary feelings. So, by the time she understands that, you'll already be the version of yourself she can never get back. And as you continue in this kind of relationship, you begin to notice something even more draining. That modern girlfriends often want the title without embracing the reality of what the title demands. She wants the comfort of being yours, but she still wants the freedom to act like she's for everyone's eyes. She wants you to make her feel chosen, but she doesn't want to sacrifice her habits, her ego, or her attention-seeking impulses in return. And you start realizing that she isn't protecting the relationship, she's protecting her image. Every argument becomes about how she looks, how she feels, how she's perceived, and you slowly start to disappear in the process. Because modern relationships are no longer a shared story, they're a performance staged for an invisible audience. And being her boyfriend means you're expected to play your role, stay in character, and never break the script, even when the story makes no sense anymore. Then there's the emotional inconsistency. The way her affection has peaks and valleys, so steep that you sometimes feel like you're loving 5 different people depending on the day. One moment she's warm, loving, and deeply connected, and the next she's distant, irritated, or overwhelmed by emotions she can't articulate. And when you ask what's wrong, she doesn't have an answer. Because the truth is, nothing is wrong with you. Something is wrong inside her, and she expects you to figure it out through intuition instead of communication. So now you're not just her partner, you're her emotional interpreter. She wants you to read her silence, decode her tone, respond to her energy, and anticipate her needs before she speaks. It becomes a silent burden you carry, because the more you try to understand her, the more she expects, and the more she expects, the more she gets disappointed when you aren't perfect at translating her feelings. You also start noticing how she sees relationships through a lens of temporary emotion instead of long-term commitment. She loves you deeply when she feels connected. She questions everything when she feels overwhelmed. She doubts the relationship when she feels insecure. She glorifies it when she feels passionate. And slowly you begin to realize that she isn't actually building with you. She's reacting to whatever emotional weather passes through her mind each week. You're trying to construct something stable while she's trying to navigate her own storms. And the more you attempt to anchor the relationship, the more she sees your stability as a wall instead of a foundation. Her feelings become the compass, and you're expected to keep up even when the direction changes without warning. And let's be real, another thing about dating today is the silent comparison culture. Even if she loves you, she's constantly comparing you, not intentionally, but psychologically. She compares the way other men text their girlfriends online. She compares the gifts other couples post. She compares the romantic gestures she sees on TikTok. She compares the emotional standards set by influencers who preach about perfect love but can't maintain relationships themselves. And without saying a word, she begins expecting you to behave according to these unrealistic examples. She doesn't measure you by the effort you give. She measures you by the fantasy she's consuming. And that fantasy becomes the invisible competitor you can never see, never hear, never argue with, and never defeat. Slowly, you start feeling tired, not because you don't love her, but because the relationship becomes a constant battle between what is real and what she thinks love should look like. You're trying to build something honest while she's chasing emotional highs. You're trying to communicate clearly while she's interpreting everything through fear or insecurity. You're trying to be present while she's stuck in imaginary scenarios. And what drains you isn't the relationship itself, it's the pressure of carrying emotional responsibilities that aren't equally shared. You realize you are the one who apologizes first, the one who risks vulnerability first, the one who brings stability first, the one who cares consistently, and the weight of being the emotional backbone without receiving the same strength in return slowly erodes the joy you once felt. It becomes even heavier when you notice how easily she entertains doubt. One misunderstanding, one bad day, one misinterpreted text, and suddenly she's questioning your intentions. You could show months of loyalty, but one emotionally triggering moment makes her forget all of it. Modern girlfriends often love hard, but trust slowly. They attach quickly but believe reluctantly. They enjoy the connection, but fear the commitment. So instead of building a partnership, you spend much of your time reassuring her, proving yourself, defending your sincerity. You become emotionally drained, not because loving her is hard, but because loving her requires constantly calming her fears that didn't come from you, but from her past, her insecurities, and the noise of the world around her. You also begin noticing how her priorities shift without warning. One week, you're the center of her world, the man she feels safe with, the man she admires, the man she brags about. And the next week, she's distant, uninterested, unavailable, not because of anything you did, but because her emotional appetite is constantly influenced by mood swings, hormonal shifts, social media trends, or conversations with friends that plant seeds of doubt in her mind. You try to keep steady, but it feels like trying to hold a fragile vase while she keeps shaking the table. And you start wondering if the connection is real, or if you're just a placeholder for whatever feeling she's chasing next. Another truth about dating today is that many girlfriends don't want to be led, they want to be inspired. They don't want to follow your direction, they want you to elevate them emotionally, but at the same time they resist guidance. They want a strong man, but challenge his decisions. They want a masculine presence, but accuse it of being controlling when it doesn't align with their emotions. They want you to lead the relationship, but only if leadership feels like comfort, not structure. So you're expected to carry the masculine role without receiving the feminine cooperation that balances it. And over time, you start feeling like you're navigating the relationship with one hand tied behind your back, expected to lead someone who simultaneously wants direction and freedom. What also becomes painfully clear is how easily she gets influenced by fear-based content. Videos about men losing interest, signs he's cheating, ways men manipulate, how to know he's not the one. She consumes them daily. And even if you've never given her a reason to distrust you, these messages plant insecurities that eventually become accusations. You become guilty in her mind before you're even questioned in real life. She doesn't see you anymore. She sees patterns she heard online. She doesn't connect with your actions. She connects with her fears. And as you try to soothe her, you realize you're fighting against a war you never started. You're not just dealing with her emotions. You're dealing with the fears society fed her. And here's the final reality of what having a girlfriend today is really like. You enter the relationship hoping for partnership, but you often end up becoming her emotional caretaker, her reassurance provider, her stability anchor, her therapist, her protector, her motivator, everything except a man who is allowed to be imperfect, human, vulnerable, or tired. You give and give and give, while she measures love by how consistently you fulfill her emotional requirements. And eventually, you begin to realize something painful but liberating. Modern relationships don't fail because men stop caring. They fail because men get exhausted from carrying both people's emotional weight. And by the time she realizes what you are truly offering, you've already turned into a stronger version of yourself, a version she can no longer reach. And now you begin to see the deepest flaw in modern relationships. She wants the benefits of old school love, with the freedoms of modern independence, but she doesn't understand that the two lifestyles contradict each other. She wants the loyalty her grandmother had, but she wants the social life of an influencer. She wants the protection of a traditional man, but the autonomy of a single woman. She wants devotion from you, but attention from strangers. And slowly you start realizing she's torn between two worlds, the world where she craves masculine stability and the world where she chases emotional highs. And you become the battlefield between those two worlds. You're trying to build a home while she's still trying to explore the neighborhood. You're trying to commit while she's still trying to keep her options open emotionally. And you feel the strain of holding something together when she wants the relationship but doesn't know how to be in one. And the strangest part of dating today is this: she expects you to protect her emotionally, but she refuses to protect you. She can have an off day and you're supposed to understand. She can take space and you're supposed to be patient. She can pull away and you're supposed to wait. But the moment you have a day where you're quieter, more introspective, stressed, or emotionally drained, she interprets it as rejection. She doesn't ask, "Are you okay?" She jumps to, "Are you losing interest?" That's the emotional inequality most men feel, but never talk about. You're allowed to be strong, but not allowed to struggle. You're allowed to support, but not allowed to need support. You're allowed to carry the weight, but not allowed to put it down. And after a while, you stop expressing yourself altogether because it feels safer to keep everything inside than to risk being misunderstood. Another thing you notice is how fragile her attention becomes. She can love you deeply on Monday and feel disconnected by Thursday simply because she got overwhelmed by her own thoughts. One random insecurity, one overthinking spiral, one sleepless night, and she begins questioning the entire relationship. It's not because she doesn't care. It's because her feelings evolve faster than her logic can stabilize them. And you become the emotional sponge for every mood change. You get blamed for things you never did. You get accused for intentions you never had. You get judged by fears she created inside her own mind. And you start asking yourself, how can I maintain stability when her emotions rewrite the story every week? But you keep trying, because men don't walk away from love easily. They walk away when they're emotionally depleted. Then comes the emotional competition. Not with other men, but with her own doubts. She wants closeness, but fears dependence. She wants loyalty, but fears betrayal. She wants commitment, but fears being controlled. And every step you take toward her heart triggers a defensive reflex in her mind. Modern couples aren't struggling because they don't love each other. They're struggling because they don't understand each other. While you're trying to offer comfort, she interprets it as pressure. While you're trying to provide direction, she sees it as dominance. While you're trying to build something stable, she fears losing her freedom. And all this time, you're trying to walk a tightrope with empathy on one side and boundaries on the other, hoping she doesn't misinterpret either one. You also begin to see how easily influenced she is by temporary emotions. If she wakes up feeling anxious, you become the problem. If she sees a TikTok about signs he's the wrong guy, she starts analyzing you. If she watches a video about toxic behavior, she starts imagining red flags that don't exist. Her emotional highs and lows dictate her perception of the relationship, and you're expected to remain patient, stable, and understanding even when her assumptions hurt you. But here's the truth. Men don't break from big betrayals. They break from constant emotional misinterpretations, from having their intentions doubted repeatedly, from having their loyalty overshadowed by her insecurity, from always being guilty until proven innocent. The communication becomes another battlefield. You try to express something honestly, and she interprets it personally. You express a boundary, and she sees it as criticism. You communicate a need, and she sees it as emotional distance. She doesn't realize that men speak directly while she listens emotionally. So even simple conversations turn into misunderstandings. You say, "I need space." She hears, "I don't want you." You say, "I'm overwhelmed." She hears, "You're the problem." You say, "I'm focused." She hears, "I'm losing interest." And because she processes emotionally instead of literally, you feel like you're constantly fighting the difference between what you said and what she felt. But the deepest truth hits you slowly. Modern girlfriends are not truly falling in love with the man in front of them. They're falling in love with the feeling he gives them, the rush of being wanted, the excitement of early passion, the validation of being chosen, the comfort of being seen. But the moment those feelings shift, because all emotions shift, she begins questioning you, even though nothing actually changed. She doesn't understand that love requires endurance, not dopamine. She doesn't understand that stability isn't boring, it's mature. She doesn't understand that a relationship isn't supposed to feel like the first month forever. And because she chases the emotional high instead of the long-term bond, she interprets natural calmness as fading interest. What breaks men the most is this: you could be the most loyal, respectful, consistent, emotionally mature man she's ever met, and she will still doubt you if her emotions shift even slightly. Her love is conditional on how safe she feels internally, not on what you actually do. And that's where the modern relationship collapses. Not from cheating, not from conflict, not from a lack of compatibility, but from emotional instability created by a world that tells women their feelings are always truth, even when those feelings contradict reality. You're not fighting her, you're fighting the invisible narratives in her mind, narratives shaped by her past, her fears, her insecurities, her doubts, and the constant stream of content telling her she deserves more, even when she already has a man who gives his all. Eventually, you start noticing how lonely it feels to be a man in a relationship today, not because she doesn't care, but because she rarely tries to understand what you carry. She wants you to open up, but she gets overwhelmed when you do. She wants you to be vulnerable, but she withdraws when your vulnerability isn't aesthetically pleasing. She wants you to be honest, but she reacts emotionally when the honesty isn't what she hoped to hear. And slowly you realize you can't rely on her emotionally the way she relies on you. That doesn't make her a bad person. It just means she was never taught how to hold space for a man, and you begin carrying your burden silently because it feels safer to protect the relationship from your truth than to risk upsetting her. And here's the darkest, most unspoken truth of modern love. A man doesn't walk away because he doesn't love her anymore. He walks away because he finally understands he cannot lead a relationship where he's not respected, cannot sustain a bond where he's constantly doubted, and cannot carry both hearts alone. He stays until the emotional weight becomes heavier than the love. He stays until the exhaustion becomes louder than the desire. And he leaves not because he's weak, but because he realizes he's losing himself in the process of trying to keep someone else stable. And by the time she recognizes what she had, he has become the man she wasn't ready to appreciate. What hurts the most, brother, is the moment you realize that the version of yourself she fell in love with was the version she imagined, not the version you truly are. In the beginning, she built an entire story in her head, a fantasy of who she believed you could be, shaped by her hopes, her insecurities, her desires, her need for emotional rescue. And you unknowingly stepped into that role because she treated you like the man she dreamed of, not the man you naturally were. But as time passed and your real self emerged, your flaws, your humanity, your boundaries, your needs, the fantasy started to crack. And instead of adjusting her expectations to reality, she began resenting you for not being the imaginary hero she created. You didn't disappoint her. Her illusion disappointed itself, and that's a pain no man deserves, because you were never loved for who you were. You were loved for what her heart wished you could be. Then there comes the silent shift. The moment you begin carrying the relationship instead of living in it, you start making all the emotional deposits, all the compromises, all the adjustments, all the apologies, not because you're wrong, but because you're the one who understands stability. You realize that if you don't fix things, nobody will. If you don't calm the storm, it doesn't calm. If you don't keep trying, the bond collapses. And this creates a painful imbalance where your effort becomes the engine and her emotions become the steering wheel. You're driving the relationship forward, but she's controlling the direction based on how she feels each week. And one day, you look in the mirror and realize you've become a passenger in your own life, living reactively to her moods instead of proactively building your world. You also begin to understand that modern relationships have become more about emotional entitlement than emotional reciprocity. She believes she deserves unconditional love, unconditional understanding, unconditional patience, simply for existing, but she offers conditional support, conditional effort, conditional affection, based on how much emotional stimulation she receives. She wants to be loved deeply, but doesn't want the responsibility of loving with discipline. She wants you to be consistent, even when she isn't. She wants you to be forgiving, even when she exaggerates her hurt. She wants you to stay loyal, even when she tests the limits of your patience. And because she was raised in a culture that glorifies feelings and minimizes accountability, she never learned that love isn't a reward, it's a responsibility. The emotional drain grows when you realize how easily she rewrites the past. Everything you've done, all the times you supported her, every moment you stood by her, all get overshadowed by the one moment she felt ignored, the one argument that hurt her ego, the one day where her emotions screamed louder than logic. Women don't remember events, they remember impressions. If she felt secure yesterday and insecure today, she truly believes the relationship shifted, even if nothing actually changed. And because her memory is tied to emotional states, not facts, you constantly find yourself defending your character, your loyalty, your intentions against narratives created entirely by her momentary feelings. This is the silent tragedy of loving someone who processes reality through the lens of how she feels. What truly breaks a man is the way she interprets his calmness. Your silence, which is meant to observe, reset, and gather strength, becomes a threat in her mind. She thinks you're losing interest, pulling away, or falling out of love. She doesn't understand that men withdraw not to abandon, but to protect themselves. Women express to connect. Men retreat to regulate. But instead of seeing your silence as emotional self-maintenance, she sees it as punishment. And suddenly the peace you use to avoid conflict becomes the very thing she weaponizes against you. And you start feeling suffocated, because even your healthy coping mechanisms become misunderstood. Then, over time, you start noticing that she only appreciates you through contrast, not consistency. When everything is stable, she forgets your effort. But the moment you pull away, detach, or stop giving her the attention she's used to, she suddenly awakens to your value. She becomes warm again, affectionate again, interested again, not because she loves you differently, but because the illusion of losing you resets her emotional awareness. Modern girlfriends don't respond to love, they respond to fear. Not because they're manipulative, but because they confuse emotional intensity with emotional truth, and they don't feel your presence until they feel the possibility of losing it. You start realizing you're losing pieces of yourself trying to maintain the version of you she prefers. You talk less about your dreams because she doesn't understand them. You minimize your struggles because she overreacts. You express fewer boundaries because she interprets them as rejection. You give up parts of your personality because they don't fit her fantasy. And slowly, you become a watered-down version of yourself. Not because she forced you, but because you loved her enough to adapt. But love shouldn't require self-erasure. Love shouldn't require silence. Love shouldn't require silence. Love shouldn't require emotional disguise. And yet many men today are forced to shrink just to maintain peace with women who don't know how to love without control. And here's where the quiet awakening happens. The moment you realize that you're no longer afraid of losing her. You've spent so long trying to hold the relationship together that the thought of it falling apart doesn't terrify you anymore. In fact, it feels like relief. You begin to crave your own company again. You begin to crave your peace again. You rediscover the parts of yourself you abandoned to make her comfortable. And this shift, this internal reclaiming of your strength, is what finally exposes the truth. She wasn't the love of your life. She was the lesson that taught you how to protect the love you have for yourself. And once a man reaches that stage, he's already gone, even if his body is still in the room. When she finally senses this shift, because women always sense it before they admit it, she panics, she becomes sweeter, calmer, more attentive, she tries harder, she suddenly wants to talk, to understand, to reconnect. But it's not because she has transformed. It's because she feels the emotional distance she spent months creating, coming back to haunt her. She realizes too late that the emotional backbone she kept taking for granted was the only thing keeping the relationship alive. And for the first time, she sees the real you, the man she never bothered to understand while you were trying to love her. But the cruel irony is, women sense your worth only when your heart is no longer in their hands. And this brings us to the final truth. The truth men learn only after experiencing the exhaustion of modern relationships. A woman doesn't lose a good man when he walks away. She loses him the moment he stops trying. She loses him the moment her emotional chaos outweighs his willingness to hold it. She loses him the moment he realizes peace is more valuable than potential. She loses him when he finally understands that love should feel like partnership, not obligation. And by the time she recognizes the depth of the man she pushed away, he's already rebuilt himself into someone too stable, too clear, too grounded, too strong to ever fall back into the emotional confusion she once called love. And that version of him, she never gets back.